whatever thoughts or questions you may have. Please.
I heard today on the news about how some of our corporations in the U.S. are going over to China and how the workers there are not treated with human dignity and rights. Amnesty International do things like that. I'm new to this, so I don't know. So.
Well, Amnesty will certainly take a position, has taken a position on these kinds of issues. We don't spend a lot of time, sadly, in the United States, up until recently, talking about economic rights. We have social, political, civil, cultural, and economic rights, and only now, because of the dire straits that many of us feel we are in our own country economically, has the idea of economic rights come to the forefront. But Amnesty has focused on economic conditions, slavery. 28 million people are enslaved in this world. These are economic deprivations of rights. So Amnesty and others have certainly had a long history of highlighting these plights around the world, China and elsewhere, including this country. Amnesty and many other organizations highlight workplace conditions, safety factors, equal pay issues. So yes, work is a human right. The right to work is a basic human right, and conditions of work are basic rights. Absolutely.
You comment on what the church should be doing there. I took a class last year at Berkeley Lady, taught by a faith colleague. And during that class, I was telling people that our church does a good job of acts of mercy, us not acts of justice. So, what should the church be doing?
Well, in 3 words, I would say a lot more. I would say in a very generic comment, I know on the issue of the death penalty, there is no way I'm going to avoid that issue to your question, that all churches in this country are on written record as being opposed to the death penalty. Well, we had an execution in Texas tonight. When we came here, Rodrigo Hernandez was put to death. We've had now in Texas 478 executions in the modern era. Rick Perry's been governor for literally half of them. Where is the church's moral outrage after 478 executions? To me, there ought to be headlines in this paper tomorrow how the responsible higher-ups in every denomination in this state and in this country should be outraged at states like Texas killing people. So to me, on the issue of the death penalty, the community of faith has been weak, very weak. I would say it has been a moral failure of the communities of faiths. Now, to be sure, the communities of faith across this country do a lot of good social justice, awareness, and work, to be sure. It's a mixed record. I would say that I'm frustrated with the faith community on human rights because this is ethical consistency. This is right up the alley of the communities of faith to be speaking of moral, good behavior and faith, and I find it just sadly lacking.
After you introduce them, to the horror of when we do it wrong, you teach them how to change the conversation. We're talking about politics, and if they're not asking the right questions, you take that. Come on.
Well, all of my students have, in my human rights classes, they have to do a minimum of 20 hours of community service with a local human rights agency. So they get to work with a wide range of different agencies, whether it's Human Rights Initiative, the International Rescue Committee, the Center for Survivors of Torture, the Dallas Holocaust Museum, an organization called Youth First Texas that's here in Dallas. House that deals with battered, beaten, and abandoned gay and lesbian teenagers who should be in high school who are living on the streets because their parents have kicked them out of their homes. You don't have to go far to see how much need there is in Dallas. So yes, we deal with a litany of horrors, to be sure. But I would like to believe that the course is really more optimistic because there's so many opportunities to make a difference for good. And again, I believe that most people are good in heart and in thought and deed and want to do good if they knew how to do it, if they knew of opportunities. And that's really, I was trying to be a conduit to get people of good heart to something that is akin to their passion, whether it's women's rights, children's rights, whatever. I'm just trying to mix and match to get people to what they want to do that normally they may not knew about what they could do. But it is hearing the world in a different way and seeing the world to realize how much good we can do. You really have to ask Catherine. She survived the class, so maybe she can speak better to it. I know the people in my classes want the opportunity to do good. Nobody takes my class. I know nobody takes my class because they couldn't find another class to take. And nobody's in there that's bored. They all know what they're getting in for. There's a lot of reading. It's very visual. It's disturbing. It's graphic. Most of these crimes are committed by men against women. There's no way of getting around talking about terrible male behavior inflicted on women and their children. Most of these people, of course, are young. They're 18, 20, 21 years old. You can't talk about this and then sugarcoat it. We have to face the reality of what terrible human behavior is and the implications of it.
Is your handle with the legislature or with the governor and general? Where's the handle?
Well, right now in Texas, it's working with different
Would you
legislatures.
repeat the question?
She wanted to know where the big emphasis was on the death penalty, if it's legislative, if it's with the Attorney General, the governor, the lawmakers, and most of my efforts and efforts of groups that I work with are with legislators. Actually, when it comes to the death penalty in Texas, Rick Perry is, the governor, any governor, is very weak to do anything on the death penalty. The governor does get to appoint the Board of Pardons and Paroles, so the governor does have severe power in knowing that if he appoints people who are for the death penalty, almost every clemency case will be denied and the governor is off the hook. And that's the game in Texas. So we have been working for more than a decade now with a variety of legislators trying to get new bills introduced in Texas to either restrict or abolish the death penalty. No restrictionist piece of legislation in this state has ever gotten a full committee hearing. We can't even get people on a committee, on the appropriate committees on the House and Senate side to even debate the bill. Such is the resistance to the idea of restricting the death penalty in this state. So it's very frustrating. You need the patience of Job to do death penalty work in this state. It's very frustrating. As I said, we had an execution tonight. We have 6 more scheduled before the end of March. There is a flyer out on the table a week from tonight, next Thursday, February 2nd. There's going to be a major death penalty event at SMU. I hope that if you can, you'll come. 2 of the people who were going to be there were former death row inmates who were innocent. One spent 9 years on death row, the other spent 18 years on death row. Innocent. They both came within hours of being killed. And the third party, that's Clarence Brantley and Anthony Graves, will be on the panel, and Reverend Carol Pickett, who was a chaplain, and who used to be for the death penalty, and was on his own personal journey of faith and ethics, literally held the hand of 95 men who died, took them to the gurney. There's no other countries. Sir?
I'm curious whether you looked at European models of criminal justice. And the reason I'm asking, I mean, just as you said, we need to look at the worst of human behavior and deal with it. When you're dealing with someone who is criminally sociopathic and has done the terrible, certainly there must be some models out there that deal with such a person in a constructive way, perhaps European, I don't know, rather than what we see here seems to prevail here.
Yeah, if you're asking a really good question, many of the models that are used are really not models for criminal justice. Many of the models that are used are Scandinavian models, especially the Norwegian model. Most of the effort that you're talking about is really two-pronged, which is one, Scandinavia has mandatory human rights education. So they have generations of boys and girls starting at the age of 4, going all the way through university, being exposed to these issues. They have a dialogue in all of those countries, including Iceland, the 5 Scandinavian countries, of little boys and girls growing into adults who have a consciousness of talking about diversity, compassion, tolerance, human rights. It's a normal part of their behavior. And their speech and their criminal justice systems reflect how to treat people. So that young man that murdered all those people in Norway, 72 people, one of the greatest crimes in Western Europe since World War II. Of course, in this country, that'd be a death penalty case, of course. But mercifully in Europe, there is no death penalty, and here you have somebody getting psychiatric help. He's going to get it from day one. And it's just different. And I would argue that one other difference is that even if you look at a comparable model of penal justice in Europe or anywhere in the world, it's still very difficult here because of the prevalence of guns in this country. And the inordinate, depraved love of violence in this country and the prevalence of more than 600 million handguns, it minimalizes the amount of help that people can get. They are released into a culture of violence where most countries in Europe just don't have the ease or the cultural love of violence across its norms the way this country does. From video games to TV to the prevalence of guns to the reliance of violence on military foreign policy. It's a cultural thing in this country. We love violence. We decry the effects of violence, from a Virginia Tech massacre to a 7-Eleven holdup. But you can't get anybody to make any inroads to limit guns. You know, the Second Amendment is the most defensible right there is. So, we live in a sick society. We just do.
And the police against our citizens is something that disturbs me. Like the Berkeley campus where the security guards did all the pepper spray. So how can we help that come together better?
Well, there are lots of organizations that are working to restrict different forms of violence that are prevalent in our society. And I can only say whatever your particular issue is, whether it's limitations on police availability to such weaponry, to handguns. I'm a historian. There was a time in this country, in 1830s and 1840s, when a small group of people stopped defending slavery and started speaking about its abolition, clearly. And they were looked at as freaks, as radicals. They were attacked even by anti-slavery people, beaten up and killed by people who were anti-slavery but weren't ready for abolition. They were way ahead of their time. Well, we have people today, perhaps in this audience, in this country, who believe that they will live to see and are working for, in one particular case, a gun-free America. It sounds preposterous. How are we going to get rid of 600 million guns? It's never going to happen in our lifetime. It seems like a futile struggle. But there was a time when most people thought we were never going to get rid of 4 million slaves. It was already 200 years old. But you endure in this struggle. It's frustrating when you don't see the fruits of what you want come to fruition in your lifetime. But if you recognize the vision that we really are going to have in America without the death penalty, we are going to have that. It's just when. We are going to have a gun-free or certainly a less violent America. I hear myself say, I sound like a Pollyanna. But I believe that because I know that there are people working all over this country to re-educate the American heart and mind to stop this insanity. So it may not happen in my lifetime, but it's going to happen. I'd say whatever your passion is, if you don't know of how to connect with people, then email me or call me. I can get you to people who have the same fervor as you. I know I can do that.
I don't know about context. Texas is a vigilante state. I recently got out of jail and I was researching Evans prison in Toronto. And where I did that, I didn't think it was any worse than Huntsville. All the stuff I've heard about Huntsville all my life. Other than Denny Ryan, he suddenly executed with little warning or kept eating. There's something on the internet that some guy spent 3 years in solitary confinement in New Mexico jail. I'm not really making a question of it, but the conditions in our prisons are horrible. You were just talking about the vigilante, the violence mentality. They can't go with depriving these people of decent food or medical care. I have a friend who's an immigration lawyer who's always telling me about his immigrants who's raised in torture. So people that U.S. citizens have been raised in torture.
You saw the same photos that I did at Abu Ghraib.
Yeah, followers will do that.
We remember how shocked we were when we saw those photos of those Iraqis, the naked Iraqis with women and dogs and barking at them. Well, what did those people do before they went to Iraq? Some of them were guards on the death row facility in Pennsylvania. And there had been complaints of similar treatment and torture of Pennsylvania death row inmates from the very people that ended up being charged and dismissed and criminalized for that behavior in Iraq. I've been on several prison missions for other countries and some here in Texas and throughout the United States. We don't want to think of ourselves as a nation that tortures people. We torture people every day, people who are in prison. If you saw the conditions on death row in Texas and in Oklahoma. Now, I'm not sympathetic to men and women who murder people. They should be in prison. But if you saw the conditions under which they are held, it would make your skin crawl. We have 28 states in this country. Arkansas is the closest one to us. 28 states that allow a pregnant female inmate who is getting ready to have a child to be shackled, spread eagle, and have her wrists and her legs chained to a hospital gurney, and that's how she gives birth. That is legal in the United States in 28 states. Now, women are the fastest growing part of our prison population. Many of them need to be in prison for seriously violent acts, but nobody, as a pregnant mom, needs to be giving birth chained worse than an animal, spread eagled and naked on a hospital gurney, handcuffed by her wrists and ankles. That may be many other countries, but it is the United States in 2012 in more than half our states. Well, if you don't have a loved one in prison, or if prison issues are not your major concern, the average American's view of people in jail is out of sight, out of mind, hell them. We don't really want to focus on these people because most of them are guilty. They don't elicit a lot of sympathy from us, and so we figure how old they are, where they belong. And it's that generic apathy towards 3 million people who are in prison right now that allows these outrageous acts and abuses to occur on a daily basis. If you went to death row in Oklahoma, the facility is under the ground. It's like going to Las Vegas because there's no light, there's no clocks, time disappears, and they put 2 people in a cell. Someone that was convicted of murdering a gay man and a gay man, a smoker and a non-smoker. Anything in which you get tension in the cell. You know, this happens in our country. Well, I saw a hand here, and then that's all. But
well, we have gone more and more to privatizing our prisons. Private prisons have become a growing industry. So the prison industry is out there looking for reasons to imprison people. We're putting more and more youth in prisons. We're locking up immigrants. I mean, it used to be just a misdemeanor to be here without documentation. Now it's a crime that you get thrown into jail for, and the prison industry is writing these laws like the one in Arizona so that they can build more prisons and put more people in them.
In 1980, this was just an FYI, in 1985, the year that I came back to Texas and started at SMU, in the United States, across the entire country, there were 11,000 women incarcerated in the United States, in the entire country. In 1995, just a decade later, this state alone had 13,480 women in prison. In Texas, 1 out of every 10 Americans who's in jail in this country is currently in jail in this state. It is, you are quite right, it's an industry. It is an industry, an unregulated industry.
And don't we have the highest percentage of our population in prison? Don't we have the highest percentage of our population in prison?
The largest mental health facility in this country, in the world, is the Texas prison system. And I don't say that as a joke. It's not a joke. It's reality. Sir?
Has any locale in the U.S. brought into their education system, their local education system, such as Dallas Independent School District, the Scandinavian model?
I did not pay him to ask that question. Yes, the answer is we have 2 states in the United States that do have mandatory human rights education from K through 12. Connecticut and California. That's it.
How long have they been in place?
California they were the first, and if my memory serves me correct, they started in the early 90s. 92, if I'm not mistaken, 92 or 93, and Connecticut came in the late 90s.
And what results are you seeing?
Well, Connecticut is one of the states with a Human Rights Program at Trinity College. I'm still waiting for California to come to fruition. I know educators who do this work, and actually they would tell you that at least in the state there is a culture of at least talking about this in the schools, which is what you want. I have graduate students who say to me what I know are the most dangerous words in the English language, which is, I never heard of this. I never heard of this. I have undergraduates who have never heard of me lie. There is something very wrong with an 18 or 19-year-old student coming to the university telling me they've never heard of what happened at me lie. Very wrong. I have students, graduate students, who have never heard of America and eugenics. It's clear to see where the pedagogical failure has been in human rights education in this country. But at least in Connecticut and California, it's better. And I'm not surprised that one of these 5 schools, Trinity, is in Connecticut. I'm just not surprised. I'm saddened that it's not more prevalent, and it is shocking to me that none of the 5 are in California. yet. It just shows how difficult this is to get it institutionalized.
Rick, just put me on your list. I'm over here.
Okay, sorry, I don't have to listen. Sorry.
My mom, she doesn't practice anything that has human rights or freedom.
Be sure to give her a good hug.
But so much she uses to be like, well, then I didn't make all the people laugh at this. Or you get there.
Well, I would hope that, I assume that a lot of your friends know that you care about these issues, that your mom takes you to these issues, and hopefully you talk to your friends about these issues, even if they don't want to hear it. Part of your job, part of my job, part of anybody who's in human rights, I'm just giving you my opinion, but I think part of our job is to make people around us uncomfortable. That's part of our job. The more that people realize that they don't want to hear what we have to say, that's a good way to know you're doing the right thing. So you just make sure your friends put it in their face, put it in their ears, and don't let them off the hook. And thank your mom.
First, a brief statement. Once in a while, the United Methodist Church calls off and does something really good. Social principle. And the United Methodist Board of Pensions just sold $1 million worth of stock in a private firm which embedded us in the prison system in ways that we don't want to be. So we're all happy with our Board of Pensions. So the second thing is that some of us with histories with SMU think of your human rights program as a kind of antidote to the partisan Bush Center. My friend, the wonderful gentleman George Purvis in Baltimore, he's virtually blind, we keep in touch, and he said, you know, the people in the human rights program won't have far to walk. Maybe transaction between the Human Rights Center and the Bush Institute, and probably some of those maybe you can't even talk about publicly, but are there some that you can talk about publicly, and what would that sound like?
There's got to be humor with human rights. We have had very little contact with the Bush folks to this point in time. I can't say that. The first time that they made an overture to us, it was mostly a request to collaborate on a program that they wanted to sponsor for some of their Freedom Fellows. And we were not consulted, we were not asked anything to give input. We were pretty much dictated to about what we could do if we said yes and why we should say yes. And I rejected that immediately, and I got a lot of very angry phone calls from administrative people, and I pointed out that this was not an ideological rejection as so much as it was a procedural policy. And I meant every word truthfully that if the Clinton Library had done the same thing to us, we would have said no. And the goal is to be collaborative and to have input and to work as a full partner and not to be dictated to. And that seemed to pacify administrators that feared that this first outreach was some kind of ideological slap in the face, when really it wasn't. Now, that being said, I haven't done anything with the Bush Library to date. They have had some, I personally have not, they have had some programs on behalf of women's rights. My cohort, the associate director, Pat Davis, has participated. I know how this is going to sound, although it's quite truthful. I have always had either a class or a former conflict where I just can't, and have not done anything. So I myself have had no interaction with the Bush folks. We have made no overtures towards them. I have met, I do want to say, where credit is due, one of the men associated with the Bush Library. I would hope that he would be a valuable human rights partner to the human rights community here in Dallas, Eric Bing. I think he's worth getting to know. He certainly cares about human rights issues in what I would call the correct, non-biased way, a non-partisan way. And I do look forward to hopefully working with some programs with him on issues related to AIDS and the right to health in that regard. I have no doubt that at some point the Bush Library is going to be inaugurated in 2013. I have no doubt it will be a focal point of gatherings for our community. With 26 arrests under my belt, I've never been arrested on the campus of SMU. I would hope that it would not come on human rights issues, but I'm not afraid if it does. We just have to wait and see. I do want to say this because you asked me a question about SMU, and I mean this sincerely. Our program from day one, in my mind, has never been just for our students. I hope you know that. Our program is for this community. We do a lot on the campus, and we do a lot in the community. But I hope that in addition to coming to our programs and all the organizations that you represent, that we can partner to move these agenda forwards. I hope that if it's possible for you, or others that you know, consider contributing to the Human Rights Program in any wide variety of ways, including, dare I say, financial. I just put that before you, that this is really what I would consider to be our program, our meeting, in anybody in the human rights community. I hope that you will be as damn proud of SMU for bringing this major to this campus in this city as I am. It was a heck of a thing. Who would have thought? SMU, who would have thought? How many times do we have to hear about football scandals and all the other relatively bad images that SMU may have correctly or incorrectly projected to the community or to the nation? But I think we got something here that everybody here ought to be really proud of.
In 1970, as an undergraduate, I participated in the only moratorium and teach-in for Kent State in the state of Texas on the campus of SMU.
Reverend King was only in Dallas once, and he was at SMU on his visit to Dallas. It's just not what people may have thought it was. There's just a lot about this program and the university which is changing to mercifully dispel